Is it any better?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Not that it's been very long. All right. Well, we'll try moving forward. We'll see what happens. Okay. I am going to mute though, because I am recording. So if you do need to contact me, just put it in the chat, okay, during the class. All right. So let's get right into it. We're going to work the spine today. And our first posture will be a butterfly pose. So we take the soles of the feet, join them together, and you can push your feet out as far as you like, and generally speaking, the further out your feet go, the more influence there is on your spine. This, which many people try and do when they're doing this, is more about here, your groin. It's really not doing that much back here. So don't worry about this stretch. Let your feet come out, just relax forward, and you'll feel more of a stretch here, okay? And we'll be here for the full 5 minutes today. As always, feel free to use support if you feel you need it to do this safely. So something under your knees, something under your forearms, like blocks, like yoga blocks, something under your forehead. Those are all perfectly fine. Sitting up on something to tilt you forward more aggressively, also good, okay? But very common confusion is confusing yin yoga and restorative yoga. And these have different names because they are very different practices. So we don't want too much support. We still want to feel a gentle stretch back here, okay? Okay, we'll come up, and then what we'd like to do is take our legs now straight. Okay, and then same idea. We come forward and down, and we're looking to stretch back here safely. And you may not feel much. Some people don't feel much of stretch with these forward folds. Now, if you'd like to be a little more aggressive, you can do the snail pose, which is an inversion. And so inversions aren't for everybody, and they're not for everybody at all times. So for instance, many yoga teachers and traditions say that if you're pregnant or you're menstruating, then you don't want to go upside down. I've had other teachers say that, you know, it's fine. So I don't know. It's one of those things that you have to weigh the benefits versus the risks. If you have neck issues, if you have certain kinds of conditions like with your eyes, glaucoma, other things with high blood pressure, inverting could be a problem. Having said that, if you are healthy and you don't have any of those other things going on, it can be really beneficial for you. So it's really this way with almost anything. Exercise can kill you. Doing the wrong exercise at the wrong time can increase your risk if you have certain conditions. So this isn't unique to inversions or yoga. This is just kind of the way that it is, okay? So again, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not going to be able to go over every single risk or benefit, but if you don't want any, or you want to lower your risk, just do the forward fold. If you know you can invert, if you think it's safe for you, then you can do what's called the snail pose, which looks like this. Okay, and you want to shrug your shoulders, bring them underneath you, and then you can interlace your fingers like I'm doing. You can hold your hips, you can hold your knees or your legs. Your legs can be together or apart. Your toes might touch the ground or not. If you're near a wall, I don't recommend walking your feet down a wall. You don't want to be that aggressive, okay? And then, other than being upside down, these two poses are the same shape. So it's the same stretch along the back of the spine. This is more aggressive because your legs weigh more than your head and shoulders combined. So you're getting more leverage because you're using more weight. And again, your heart is above your head, which characterizes this as a inversion in yoga. And that's going to have certain physiological benefits for you. A little less than 2 minutes left here. Okay, so you want to take your time unwinding from that pose, whether you were folding forward or you were inverted. If you were inverted, when you come down, very often you don't want to straighten your legs right away. You'll feel kind of the impulse to not do that. That's fine. Just come down, let your feet rest on the mat, and then when you feel or sense that you're ready, you can take your legs out and straighten them. Okay, now we will do the leg cradle before we continue, just as a counter stretch. I always like to try and give a counter stretch after every few poses. There are exceptions to this, but generally that allows us some time to release any pent-up imbalances or discomfort that might be lingering in our body. And then we'll do a hinge, so hands under hips, palms down, we send the legs straight up, and we're going to hinge down. So we lift the head and neck. If there's any pain in the back, you just bend your knees, otherwise legs straight. Exhale, lower the legs, and just before they touch, pause, take a nice deep breath in, and then exhale onto your back. So move our hips over to the right edge of the mat in preparation for banana pose. We reach up, grab the right wrist with the left hand, and pull our upper body over to the left. Take the left leg, move it to the left, and cross the right ankle over the left ankle. And you should feel a stretch in your right waist and maybe up into the ribs. Now again, as always, we want to check in and make sure that our body feels safe in this position. And we also want to be sure we do feel that stretch and that it's a satisfying stretch. It does not need to be your maximum stretch for that part of your body. But as I've said in the past, oftentimes when we are not feeling any stretch in a yoga pose or any fatiguing, any kind of intensity, if we're doing power yoga, if we're not feeling any kind of intensity, then the pose probably isn't really having much of an impact on us. There are yoga poses that are focused mostly on relaxation, and these are called restorative yoga poses. And we do a few of those between the yin postures in this class. We also do a few of them in the flow class, But those are, you could say, the exception to the rule, that most yoga postures, be they yin or yang in nature, are trying to exercise the tissues of the body in some way. They are trying to impact our body in some way. So we will usually feel the impact in our body. It will be something that we can perceive on a conscious level. So please take your time making your way to the other side, and you might just check in, and as you come through neutral, just see if you compare both sides, if you can feel the change, the discrepancy between the two sides, and that will help maybe on a conscious level help you register and feel what the yoga postures are doing to your body. Otherwise, I think it's very easy to do the practice, and just depending on your body awareness, you might do the practice and you may notice you feel better, you might not. You may notice a change, you might not. It it really can vary from person to person. So sometimes it's helpful to just actually stop and consciously register the changes as they happen. A little less than 2 minutes left here, and this is never a bad time to check in and maybe make some subtle adjustments if you like. So, for example, I'm not maybe feeling quite as much stretch as I like, so I'll see if I can take myself a little deeper and get a little more intense stretch. And I do like to remind everyone that more is not better. So you don't have to pursue a deeper stretch, even if it's available to you. Okay, so let's go ahead and unwind from this one. And again, I'll invite you to take a moment to consciously register what's going on in your body, even if you don't understand that, even if it's just, lots of sensations or very subtle sensations. You might say that learning the language of your body is like any other language, any other skill. It takes time and it requires you to put in the effort. And so without realizing it, most of us in a modern culture like ours are very disembodied. We actually don't have very good body awareness. And we notice usually two things: pain and pleasure. So if something tastes really good, if something feels really good, we notice that. If something hurts, we notice that. There's a lot of range of sensation between those two that we basically just don't really register. And that's a shame, because there's a lot of sensation in there that actually is very valuable for us. It tells us a lot about the condition of our body and our health. So the rebound is an opportunity to begin that process of listening. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. We're going to shake it out. And then we will hinge on up. So same as last time, but we use the legs to pull us up. And then let's go ahead and do a little more counter stretching and / warm up. This is called a marauding bear. And it's very similar to cat-cow in yoga, if you've ever done that. And then when you're done with that, you can tuck your toes and come up into the down dog, and you just walk your dog out a bit. Stretch it out. Good. And then from there, we transition and come into a Sphinx or seal pose. Propping ourselves up on the elbows is called a Sphinx. And then straightening your arms is called a seal. And if this is a little too intense, you can walk your hands forward. If it's not intense enough, you can walk your hands back. Another option is to prop your elbows up on some blocks in the Sphinx position. And other things to consider are, is your head held up? Does it drop forward? Is it drop back? Are your shoulders depressed or relaxed? Are your legs together or apart? Okay, so these are all things to consider here. All of them change the way the posture feels, at least subtly. And some of them may make the difference between whether you can hold this for the full 5 minutes, whether you can do it safely or not. So even though there are options, it doesn't mean the same option is appropriate for everybody. Sometimes when people hear a list of options, they think, oh, I can just pick whatever I want. That's not necessarily true. Some of the options I just named might be ineffective for your particular physique, or it might be dangerous for you, again, because of maybe a health condition or the unique makeup of your body and genetics. Okay? So generally speaking, these things are safe. It's unlikely you would injure yourself just by doing one of the things I described. But anything is possible. So we always want to practice with caution. We always want to be careful. Okay, so very gradually coming down. You might feel very sensitive. I do, as I come out of that. And then just rest for a moment or two. Generally, those sensitive sensations very quickly begin to dissipate, and we don't even have to do anything. Now, we're not going to rest too long because we have another back bend that we'd like to do as part of this set. So what you'd like to do is press back into a kneeling position, and you may want to kneel closer to the front of your mat because there's the potential to go back. This is called a saddle pose. Now you can see I'm sitting on my heels, which is one option. You can also sit between your heels, and you could also put a block and sit on that. So there are two areas that tend to create problems in this posture. One is this area here, ankle, foot. The other is here, the knees. And then there, you could say there's one more, which is the back, if you can get back. So the first thing addressed is your feet. A lot of times it's just the bones of your feet pressing into the ground. So I'm on a carpet and then I'm on a yoga carpet. So I have quite a bit of padding here, but if I were on a hard floor, that might really hurt. So just adding some padding can solve that. This isn't a feature of this posture, this pain here. This isn't something we're trying to create. Another option available to some people, not everybody, but it is available to me, and this is often how I do this posture, is if you have enough tibial rotation, which is this bone here, you may be able to get your feet out to the side. Also internal femoral rotation, which is the bone here. So that combination allows me to do this, and it actually feels less stressful on my knee. So some people, this would be like, it would kill their knee. They would damage their knee because they don't have that rotation. But I do, so this is fine for me. It's actually, like I said, more comfortable. And that maybe brings us to our knees. This can be a real challenge for many people's knees. So generally speaking, knees wider releases the fascial tension here on the thighs, and it allows more slack. So a lot of people, if they just take their knees wider, very often that solves the problem for them. Other people sitting up, because again, as you begin to straighten the leg, the tension, the fascial tension here created by the knee joint is relieved, and then that takes the pressure off the knee. It feels better. So sitting up on something. And then finally, if those two options don't work, I just recommend repeat the last back bend on the belly, the one that we did, Sphinx or Seal. This is just maybe not for you today, okay, if all of those suggestions I made don't help. Okay, so once you've addressed the knee and ankle issues, if there were any, you want to see, do you feel a stretch in the front of your thighs? And if you do, that's already a beneficial therapeutic stress. You don't need more. So if you see me going back, that's because I'm not getting a stretch. So the point isn't to go back. The point is to get a beneficial therapeutic stress, which if you're here and you're feeling this stretch, you've already got it. So your work is done. If you don't feel it, you begin lowering back, hands, elbows, crown of the head, or maybe all the way back onto your back, like me. Okay, and this brings in other benefits. So when I was sitting upright, there was a stretch in the ankle. That's not the main reason we do this, but there could be a stretch here, which is beneficial. This can have benefits for the knee as long as we aren't hurting the knee. There's benefits with stretching the quads and hip flexors. And then once I get far enough back, it does two things to our spine that are beneficial, this posture, potentially, depending somewhat on which variation you're doing. So if you're back on your back like I am, then your low lumbar spine and your sacrum are compressed in a beneficial way. So you can overdo compression, and you may sometimes hear yoga teachers talk about not compressing the lumbar spine or the spine. The spine needs compression in order to stay healthy, but it needs the right amount, and it needs it when it isn't damaged. So if you have an injury, if you have damage, you may need to address that in a medical context, because that's a medical issue. It's not a yoga issue. One teacher I really admire once said, yoga is for healthy people. Now that might seem to contradict a lot of what you hear in the yoga community, where oftentimes yoga is touted for its healing benefits. And that's true. Many of the tools that yogis use can help us heal. But this teacher, in many respects, is right.
that the tradition that we call yoga was really meant to take a healthy person and enlighten them, for lack of a better way of putting it, to transform their heart and mind so that they could experience what we might call divinity in every moment of their life. And that might sound like a lofty goal, but that was the goal of the yogis. It was to experience God, you might say. So their goal was not health. They assumed you were healthy, and then they gave you practices and meditations and things to work on so that you could have this shift in perception. And my own experience of that is that's very real. It might sound, again, lofty, and it might sound like it's something for people in caves to experience, or people doing ayahuasca or on acid trips, but this is something that, in my experience, is accessible to everybody if you're willing to put in the time and the effort. Now, I recognize, because I'm speaking to a modern audience, that generally that's not why most of us come to do yoga. Most of us come maybe because our doctor told us to. Again, in Western medicine, yoga is very often seen as a therapeutic, as a way to heal or to help people be healthy. Sometimes we do it because it's fashionable. Sometimes we do it because we do feel better, we notice a difference. And sometimes people are motivated by the spiritual aspects of it. They are looking for a different way of living, and yoga can definitely bring us that if we're open to it. But my point is that if we have a medical issue, if we have pain, if we have something, then my recommendation is that you address that medically. And that doesn't mean you have to go see a Western doctor. Ayurveda is, you might say, the healing branch of the yoga tradition. It's called Ayurveda. You could see an Ayurvedic specialist. You could see a Chinese medicine doctor. They'll be a doctor, but they have different tools than a Western doctor would. You can see a physical therapist, a yoga therapist. A yoga therapist is someone who, again, takes the tools of yoga but applies them medically, which is different than somebody like me. Okay, let's go ahead and take our time coming out of that. There are a few ways out. Some people, especially if you're sitting on your heels, like to just roll to one side. I think the most popular way out is to sit back up and then release your legs. But if you have a lot of rotation like me, and again, I'm in the minority, most people can't do this. This is just the way I was born. I can just release my legs and take them out. That's the easiest way for me. So as I was saying, that posture compresses the lumbar, and it also creates space in the SI joint, at least the way I was doing it with my legs out like that. And so it's a very, very therapeutic, very needed workout for those joints, generally speaking, because sitting does the opposite to those things. It tends to round the spine and it compresses the SI joints. So in many ways, I feel like that's the antidote for sitting hours every day. So if you get home from your desk job and you're like, oh my God, I feel horrible, try that posture for a while if you can do it, especially the way that I was doing it. You might find that it really ticks those boxes. It really kind of makes you feel like you undid a lot of what's going on in your body from sitting there all day. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. Again, I like to give you the opportunity to just freely do what you feel you need to do. I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. And then let's finish with the twisted roots. And so we will take the right knee over the left. You can lock ankles, you don't need to though. And same with the knees. Generally the knees are locked, but you don't have to lock them. And then you just drop your knees down to one side. And the shoulders basically stay where they are. Now, as always, feel free to experiment. Arm position, head position, leg position. I'll just mention briefly the props once again. My knees, I don't know if you can see, but my knees are actually in the air. There's space underneath my knees. One question that students often have is it better for my knees to be in the air? Or if I push my knees down, my shoulder is in the air? Which one is better? The answer is neither one is better. One might be better for you. So maybe with your knees in the air, you feel a lot of pressure here. And if you drop them down, that pressure is relieved. Well, then that's better for you. I feel just the opposite. With my knees down, I feel quite a bit of discomfort with my shoulder and arm in the air. So I'm much better here with the knees floating. Now, some people don't like either option. And so for those people, that's why there's the yoga block. And I think many of you have heard me say in the past that if you don't have props at home and you'd like to pick up some for your online yoga classes, start with the blocks. I mean, if you want to go full in, go for it. Generally, a full set of props would be a bolster, at least one blanket, but as many as 3. And when I say blanket, I mean a yoga blanket. It's a very specific thing. It's exactly the size of this mat that I'm on. If you were to put it out and then fold it over, it basically fits on the mat almost perfectly. So bolster, at least one blanket, 2 blocks, and then a strap. That's what I would consider the minimum props. And then if you want to do restorative yoga, you need 2-3 blankets because there's a lot of restorative postures that might use more than just one blanket. My experience with them is they last probably a lifetime. They don't generally wear out, so it's one of those investments that you probably will only make once and only need to make once. It isn't something that you will need to purchase over and over again, unlike your laptop or your computer or techie stuff. You can just make that investment, buy something you like, and then you have it for the rest of your life. You can use it. Okay. So we will switch sides here. Kind of like banana, you may want to move your hips over to the edge of the mat. It's not required in this posture or in banana pose for that matter, so it's not an essential cue, but it can be quite useful if you want to keep your body on your mat for whatever reason. You'll see I'm placing my hand on my knee here. I like that. I'm not pushing down, but the weight of my hand does add a little bit more leverage. It gives me a slightly deeper stretch, which I like. And the other arm, I have an injury in this shoulder that I'm still recovering from. And so for me, it can be tricky to find that sweet spot where I'm not experiencing pain in that shoulder. And that's not an uncommon thing for people to experience in these postures, banana pose and the twist. So just be mindful of that. Remember that you could put your arm wherever you like as long as your spine is still twisting. And the basic idea is that the shoulders remain on the ground. Again, it can come up some, it's fine. But basically your chest is facing the ceiling, but your pelvis is facing to the right. Your left hip is above your right hip, but your shoulders are level with the ground. I know that might seem a little bit laborious in terms of explanation, but I've taught enough and I've seen enough times where students, they don't get what the pose is about, and they might follow my directions literally, left knee over right, down to the right, but then they end up in this position, laying on their side. And so again, this is where usually more common among students, but this is also something I find in yoga teachers where they don't really understand the dynamics of what the intention in the posture is. So pose like this, really one of the main benefits we get from it is the twist in the spine. There are other benefits, and I can emphasize those benefits. But I can almost promise you that in terms of exercising the tissues of the body, there really isn't a benefit in doing this. This could be considered a restorative posture, but honestly, it's not that comfortable. So I even think it fails on that front and that point. I think it's a bad restorative posture as well. Maybe if we had a pillow under the head and we prop the knees up or something, we could turn it into a viable restorative posture, but just as it is. So again, this just comes from experience. I've seen it happen where a student will roll onto her side and think that she's getting some kind of benefit by doing that. So remember, you should feel this in your body. It should feel safe. And basically in this shape today, we want the chest facing up and the pelvis facing right. All right, everyone, take your time, unwind, relax, and feel. Then we'll bring our legs in and give ourselves a little counter stretch. And then you can unwind onto your back in what we call a pentacle pose. Set a timer for 6 minutes or so, and then just rest and take Shavasana. So that your body, this is a restorative pose. So this is just about resting. We're not trying to stretch or work anything. We just want the body to rest in stillness for a few minutes.